So the name of this fireside chat is the role of AI in call centers. And this will be just a free-flowing conversation um, on the topic. And, we won't take any longer than an hour. Basically, we'll take 30 to 40 minutes or so just to talk between us. We'll take any questions coming out of the attendees for the rest of the time and get everybody out on time and respectful of everybody's time. So, Russ, you've been around speech and voice conversational technologies for some time. Let's start there. Tell us, who are you, and tell us more about Define Crowd and your role.
Yeah. So I've been with Define Crowd for about 8 months now. I'm our head of sales, and I work with our team on selling AI data into companies, into speech companies, to help them continue on the AI ASR speech technology transformation. So prior to coming to Define Crowd, I have over 15 years in ASR speech call center. In the mid 2000s, I was part of Tell Me Networks, which was one of Microsoft's largest private acquisitions at the time, as Microsoft got into the speech ASR space through that acquisition. I spent a few years there. Then I spent 8 years at Nuance, and Nuance is widely recognized as one of the leaders in speech recognition, natural language processing. And through that time there, I saw a real maturation of conversational AI. And then I went and spent 2 years at Voci, still in the call center space, still AI, but this time on the text-to-speech and speech analytics, on how we're using text and speech analytics in the call center to mine customer data and help agents in real time. So, throughout all my roles, I've been a customer-facing person, working in sales engineering, sales support, business development, helping customers really, take old technology and move it to new ASR speech technology. And I've seen great transformation in those 15 years.
I bet you have. Yeah, so you've worked with some heavy hitters, and that's exactly how I view Define Crowd now. So, cool. Thank you for that background. So, again, name of the fireside chat, the role of AI in call centers. So I like to sort of fixate on that, and I want to start with just the simple question of what is a call center and what type of businesses use call centers. And maybe somewhere in there delineate what the difference might be between a call center and contact center. Give us some of that foundational knowledge here.
Sure. So first of all major businesses have a call center. Some companies have their own agents, their own call center. Companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Wells Fargo, State Farm, they have some of the largest call centers in the world. Other companies choose to outsource all that. And so you have companies like AT&T, Conduent, Alorica. They have all the agents, and companies outsource their calls to them. So when people think of a call center, they think of this giant warehouse of agents answering 1-800 calls, headsets stacked in a room. And for the most part, that's what it really was or has been, and somewhat today. And I've seen call center and contact center used interchangeably, call center placing a call, contact center maybe more broadly today is because contact doesn't just have to be a call. There could be a chat. So you can have agents chats. So, when we think of call centers, they were predominantly, agents answering the phone. And it's always been a cost center for companies. So then along came IVR, interactive voice response. And that was a growing technology which allowed them to say, hey, we don't always have to have an agent answer the call. We can have a machine answer the call. That's a lot less expensive. So companies were quick to adopt IVR to save money. And that's all part of the ecosystem of call centers. But those early systems, oh my God, they were terrible. It only made customers more frustrated. They couldn't get what they wanted. And I mean, I'm guilty. Where's that zero button? Can I hit zero fast enough? But with AI today, those systems are becoming a lot better. I liken it to airport kiosks. Remember years ago when they first put those kiosks in and you walked to an airport and were like, what is that? I'm not using that. Now, anybody who travels with frequency, they'll never go up to the desk. I'm going to get my kiosk, get my ticket, and move on. That same transformation is happening today in call centers and self-service. People are being able to self-serve through chat, IVR, voice assistants. So that's all part of the emerging call center ecosystem today.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, I'm one of those people who, I call, if I have to call up the bank for some reason, it's just the moment it connects, it's 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're making some of the companies have made those systems where they lock the customers out. You can't hit zero. And they say, well, that's not a correct response. And you start yelling representative and people just get more angry. By the time you get to an agent, you're already like super angry. And the agent's like, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, and it becomes this game. And when I say game, I mean that in the worst possible interpretation of the word game, to figure out the path of least resistance, or the shortest distance to the agent.
Yep.
It's that's a frustrating experience. And like so many things, when we look at a human based operation and we're talking about AI,
Yeah.
There's this spectrum of possibility between most people will jump to the ultimate end of the extreme, the end of the spectrum, to where AI is going to raise everything and just take over and no humans will be left. On the opposite end of the spectrum is AI is utterly useless and humans have to remain part of it at every potential point of intersection. Share with me where you sort of think that needle's going to end up, whether it's going to be more AI dominated or more human dominated, what you think, how you see it playing out in the short term.
Sure. Well, first of all, artificial intelligence, AI, it's improving the entire customer journey of how customers can self-service. They can do things they couldn't do before. It's getting more complicated too. There's a growing number of ways in which you can now, self-serve. You have IVR, you have virtual assistants, you have chatbots. You can even use Facebook Messenger now as a way to communicate, and the list goes on. And then we have technologies like natural language processing, right? And the point is, how do we get the conversation to feel like you're talking to a human, right? So that it's not machine and being very natural. So natural language processing it's all about improving, the intent, understanding what you said, and allowing you to talk in a very conversational way. And that's all powered by AI. One of the biggest success stories I've seen is in using it in the front end when you call. Years ago, I remember some of the terrible systems because I worked at Nuance. You'd call a company and there was 9 menu options. By the time you got to menu option 8, you forgot what menu option 1 was. And one of the best examples I had was, I want to order checks. So I called a bank. That's not in the top menu options. It isn't like check your balance, transfer your balance, order checks. It's somewhere buried down an IVR path. And how many times do you go through it? Oh, that was the wrong path. Let me back up and start over. Half the time you just give up. With natural language processing, it says, how may I help you? And you say, or you chat, because you can chat just as well, order checks. Boom, you go right there. So the idea is you circumvent all of those menus using a natural language way to communicate. So that's one way that AI is helping. And to do that, you don't necessarily need a human. Sometimes you need a human in the loop to train it, but that's all machine now. The other way we're doing it is, I always find that computer's good, Humans, good. By themselves, okay. Human plus computer, very good. And so one area you're seeing AI is in the call center with the actual agents, where as you and I have a conversation with an agent, that call is being transcribed and converted to text in real time. And then there's analytics being applied to that. And what it's doing is the analytics are looking and they're cueing the agent, you didn't say your disclaimer, or the customer wanted to do this, and it gives a pop-up. So it provides cueing to the agent on maybe what to do. It's also taking notes in real time. So it's helping the agent. So the agent can focus on listening to you, not writing down all my notes, because they lose focus when they have to write down. So by helping the agents can be more attentive. They're less stressful. They're more successful. So the studies have shown it decreases agent handle time. It increases CSAT. For some companies, it increases upsell, reduces mistakes. And then you get happier agents, and there's a lot of turnover in the call center space. So now with this technology, agents feel more productive and you're not getting the turnover. So that's an area where you get machine plus human doing very well. And then on the post-call side, all those calls get recorded. And years ago, they would go into a warehouse on giant discs and tapes, and they'd only come out if there was some lawsuit and you had to comb through them. Well, now with really advanced speech to text analytics, we're mining, companies are mining all that data to get the voice of the customer. Why did these customers call? What were they doing? What was their sentiment? How were they doing? So really powerful how AI is becoming useful in helping agents, helping customers self-serve, and helping companies learn about the voice of their customer.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so you're you're painting a picture which is sort of in line of with the way I view it, which is that these conversational AI solutions augment the human being in the role, and that's, to me, that's the winning play, because I think we've seen with Google Duplex and other things that people aren't in 100% comfortable necessarily with talking to a non-human, and so being able to have, I was on talking to a group of folks, leaders from credit unions about a month ago, and just the opportunity for agents in a call center to have that richer context, like what you're talking about, to where just eliminating so much of the surface area of the interaction, to where they can really focus in on what matters. And
let me ask you this: when you get to an agent now, do you not expect him to know everything you've done thus far?
It's upsetting when they don't.
It is upsetting when you don't. But you take some of the companies, like if I'm looking for a computer and I'm stuck, I don't know which monitor to use, and I call an agent. Lots of times now they know what I'm looking at. I see you looking at a computer, this GPU processor, and that helps the agent, right? They already have information about you. They know what you're doing, and it speeds you along, versus like you get there and they're like, well, what can I help you with? Well, and you start all over. That's just the ire of many people.
It is. And there's context coming out of your previous interaction. So there's history. And there's whether or not there's records of things having being resolved or not, and that being predictive of what the call may be about. But then there's also sentiment analysis sort of things where, and this, we're just starting to scratch the surface, but hey, this guy calls into the bank once a month, and the last 11 times out of the 12 times he did that, he was mad.
Right. Yeah. And that's being used a lot now, the sentiment. It's being used for agent training. So I worked for Voci for 2 years, and we used to look at the transcripts. And then we would see, and you'd see the sentiment and the emotion. And it was always a training. And you could see if the sentiment or emotion got better or worse. And the alarming thing is if you had an agent or a call and the sentiment and emotion got worse, that means the agent maybe they didn't do their job. How did you make a customer, get angry? What you want to see is you want to see their sentiment and emotion improving. And then there's real time tactics too, right? Using real time and judging the sentiment and emotion. If a customer is having a conversation and all of a sudden they go to angry or irritated, it can alert the supervisor, and the supervisor can barge in and say, "Okay, what's going on here?" So that's where real time is becoming really good of helping agents, getting
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah, yeah, because AI hears the word supervisor come up in the call. It like escalates to 87% critical, or whatever. Yeah, that's you could just see how useful that is, which is a nice segue to my next question for you, which is, with all of these things that we're talking about, and all of these benefits that are being realized currently, and then benefits that are just beyond the horizon, what are reasons why, or maybe a central reason why, a business might hesitate to bring in some of this AI technology into their call center, their
It,
contact center?
it's a big change. It can be overwhelming, right? So how do you deliver a solution that delivers a rich customer experience, differentiates you as a customer, and doesn't break the bank, right? Let's face it, if you had all the money in the world, go ahead, do it. Um, Most companies, they don't have the knowledge, the experience, and the people, right? Only relatively recently have you seen companies hiring natural language processing scientists. It was a scarce skill. So they simply had to go to a customer like a Nuance to build it. And it's not as simple as it was anymore. Now it's like, well, what do you want? Well, I want to have a voice channel, an SMS channel, a chat channel, a web channel, a messenger channel, Twitter channel. So now you have to build out all of these interfaces because you don't want to miss a channel. So customers they want to choose how they interact. They expect to be consistent. So you can't have two channels be great and the other two poor. They expect a consistent experience. And probably one of the most difficult is they expect to be able to move from channel to channel while maintaining context. We talked about a call center and the agent knows what you've done, but it could be I'm on the web and I'm looking for a computer and it goes to the agent. I expect the agent to know what I've done. So that's really hard to get all the channels. It becomes a huge integration effort as well between all these channels. And so how do I do it all and do it well? It's a huge risk. If I don't do it well and alienate my customers and give them a bad experience, they'll leave. So it's risky. I know there was a time, one of the customers we dealt with back in my early days at Tellme Microsoft, we had like our high-end customers for a bank. We never sent them to self-service. We always sent them to a live operator because we were afraid the technology would aggravate them. That's changing today because people don't want to talk to an agent. So they were afraid of implementing AI because they were afraid of not making their customers happy. So that's the risk is you don't do it well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, just it's so much of a sea change.
Yeah.
That taking it on, period, can be daunting, and in other situations, figuring out how to make an integration of that magnitude reconcile with other things going on in the normal calendar of business. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to ask you something that we didn't necessarily, wasn't on my list of questions beforehand, but we sort of danced around it. And you mentioned a number of companies earlier, and the way I think about things is just thinking about different verticals.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that we've seen with voice and AI since Alexa showed up, and probably long before that, is companies have come into this realm of voice and AI, and they've brought some sort of core capability with them. Maybe they're good at this or they're good at that, and it's everything's all very horizontal.
Mhm.
And then when they enter the marketplace and they things start to become real, it's almost like there's this magical gravitational force in play that steers them immediately to one vertical or another over all others.
Mhm.
And it's really fascinating to see. And I could give you a endless list of examples. My point is, for as it relates to call centers, is there any particular vertical,
Mhm.
be it banking, healthcare, automotive, hospitality, publishing, whatever, gaming? I guess gaming doesn't have, well, I guess gaming does have call centers that maybe is better suited, or where you've seen more evidence of shorter term
Mhm.
adoption and traction than other ones.
So it started out predominantly in banking because you looked at, what was the highest volume of people calling in to do something. Typically, it was banking, right? People called every day, check my balance, transfer my balance, do this, check my stock trades. So banking was the largest. And so when you set out to do IVR and self-service, that's where you started. And then you got healthcare, and then you got airlines and telecom. Now it's everywhere. There is no utilities, right? People call to check your utility bill. Nestle has a chatbot where you can ask nutritional information, right? So there's no vertical now that doesn't want to implement some sort of conversational AI. Hotels are offering concierge type services now. It's not just check my balance, but hey, book a room. I want breakfast ordered the next day. All of this without having to actually talk to a real person. So what I have seen in the 15, 20 years is going from a very narrow set of industries to so many industries using it, right? Whether they're using self-service or the speech analytics. There are companies out there today, like in consumer staples, where they scour, they go through all your Yelp reviews and all the reviews, and they pull all of that and they run it through natural language, and they're looking for keywords and key phrases and what you said about products. So it's everywhere, and I'm amazed at how many companies are up and coming, and they're building. And what you find is you find companies building. We're the chatbot for energy. We're the chatbot for consumer staples. We're the chatbot for telecoms. So what you find is you find up and coming companies that are developing a niche for their conversational AI where they have industry experience.
Yeah, well said. And I in thinking about this chat and call centers, contact centers, and AI, that's a red hot
Yeah.
emerging forefront of the overall emerging landscape of voice and AI, and it comes up all the time. And I think about hospitality, and I think about hotels specifically, because you know if not for any other reason, you can consider the front desk, the reception, the reception concierge of a hotel as a call center of one.
Yeah. Yeah,
you
you can.
know,
Yeah.
and so thinking about it in those terms allows you to sort of think at a more granular level on all the things we've been talking about in this chat here about the efficiency gains and cost reductions that AI can bring. And there's a company that's in the space. I'm not going to mention them, but they put out a study that showed they actually were doing some of the design work for a big
Mhm.
resort in Vegas, which I also won't mention who it is. And the resort integrated voice via Alexa, I think, in the rooms, and they did it in this thoughtful way.
Mhm.
And what they found was that the process of the occupants asking same sort of stock questions that get asked 1,000 times a day, not to the person at the front desk, but to the smart speaker.
Mm.
It reduced cost so much in terms of the calls that didn't happen,
Yeah.
that it would have paid for more than 2 additional full-time employees.
Wow. Wow. You know, speaking about Vegas, you know, sometimes the technology is too good. So when I was with Microsoft and Caesar's Palace was building their Augusta Tower, they invited us in and said, "We want our rooms all voice enabled. Close curtains, turn TV on." We said, "Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely." Kind of like, you know, the Alexa concierge type of services. We came back a month later, they're like, "We decided that was a bad idea, that people in Vegas get nervous if a system is listening to what you're doing in your room." So they kind of nixed it. So that was the point where the technology had actually gotten so good. They're like, "No, we don't want microphones in our rooms everywhere."
You know, that's very interesting because Vegas, if your slogan is "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas,"
Exactly.
and you know, this technology is in many ways a direct affront to that concept.
Yeah.
And you know, if you can make it work there, it'll probably work anywhere.
Yep.
And the results I've seen, you know, we've looked a lot at hospitality at different points over the last 6 months, and um, people are fine with it.
Yeah.
Now, you can make an argument that the pandemic has muted privacy concerns across the board on a
Mhm.
temporary basis,
Mhm.
and that's true. But when those privacy concerns start to come back, where is that threshold um, going to end up, where what's actionable and what's not, for how you view your own privacy? And I think voice and AI is in hospitality to stay, as well as many other places.
Yep.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, they're getting better, but they're not perfect, right? Data science, they need data. The AI systems today, they're only as good as the data that builds them. And that's what we're about at Define Crowd. We're about getting data, providing data, feeding data into these systems to make them better, right? Training them, make them a lot better. And the examples I have is most of these systems today, they're built for US English non-accented people, right? If, you know, once you start to get into accents, the systems don't understand as well. Foreign language support, it's just hitting the cusp of that, right? So, you know, we provide data in languages, you know, to help people build out for either, you know, foreign languages, foreign countries. And it's not just language support. Today's sentiment is actually quite poor. Sentiment is where they look at the, you know, the words that you say and, you know, say whether, you know, you're happy, you're sad, that bad. So you key words like cancel, hate, great, terrible. Well, the example I have is, you know, if I bought a new Tesla and I had a follow-up survey and they said, "Well, how do you like your car?" And I said, "Well, my Tesla is badass." Well, what happened is the engine would come back and said, "Oh, he said the word bad. He said the word ass. He doesn't like his car." But we all know Teslas really are badass. So we're in the process of helping, you know, label and tune data so that they get that right. And then those systems get better over time. And, you know, we're working with, you know, many great companies, you know, across the globe to make those systems better so that they understand more languages. They understand what you said with better intent. They understand your emotion and sentiment to a higher degree. So it's just going to get better from here on out.
Well, and I think about things from a different direction. I think about you know, I was thinking leading up to this that you know, when I get a call from my parents,
You actually
automatically
answer it?
I do most of the time. But you know, if I get a call from my parents, uh, it automatically is in the 90% probability of this is a disaster. You know, like I'm getting bad news on this
Yes,
call.
yes.
And then depending on the time of day, it will quickly move to 100%. Depending on the exact time. And I just sort of reflect on, but it's so powerful to know that picking up the phone.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it even pick it up. And I think about that with call centers, and I think about healthcare. And if somebody's calling, everything, you got pretty rich data on your customer. It's just you can't share it because you're regulated, but you've got a lot of data on the user in a healthcare context most of the time. And so if that 87-year-old woman is calling you, or using your voice service, pushing that button, on the thing around her neck or whatever,
Yeah.
you got a problem,
Yeah.
and I think healthcare is a particular example. I like hospitality, I like banking, I really like banking because there's so much on the line there. But healthcare to me stands out as there's very unique opportunities as it relates to integrating AI. And yeah, no. So my last question for you, and all of this is a pretty good segue. Is it just an inevitable conclusion? So I'll give you one other anecdote even before I ask this. So I remember specifically in the 90s, I'm a big music fan, and I remember a discrete period of multiple years where CDs, you would go to Music Land, Sam Goody, people on this webinar are like, the hell are any of these
What is
things?
Sam Goody? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what is this guy talking about? So you'd go to any of these stores and buy a CD, for 15, 20 bucks. And the CDs would have stickers on them.
Mhm.
So, parental advisory was one of the more common ones. But one that you would start to see is this work of music does not use autotune at all. And I remember seeing that. It was a window of time where you would see that for some artists. I wouldn't call it totally widespread, but you would see it. And that sticks with me too, because, just as soon as technologies rise, there is an equal and opposite reaction, opposite distributed over a period of time, maybe not opposite right away, where business people and operations minded folks, marketing minded folks may see an opportunity to differentiate themselves by going the other direction
Mhm.
and saying, no, we don't do any of that AI stuff. We're all human around here. And yeah, maybe you are frustrated, but well, you used to be frustrated, but now that whole conversation's reset and you've come to realize that there's some deficiency in all these other things and you want the old way back.
Mhm.
Do you think it's how does that sort of story strike you? And do you think it's inevitable that AI gets adopted in all contact centers, or do you see some sort of
I do.
bifurcation?
I do think it's inevitable, right? Though there will, you just can't. I mean, the cost savings and what you can do, it's just, it's always going to be there. But what it is, there's a little bit of a shift, right? So companies are going to adopt AI. You'll fall behind if you don't. But they're using AI again to do more things it didn't do before, to delight customers, or for things like a nutritional chatbot. And the call center is also not going to go away. What it is now, it is the escalation channel for more complex tasks. I'm not going to call the call center to check my hotel's point balance. I can do that on the web. What I am going to call them about is the fact that I stayed at a hotel last week and I didn't get my points transferred to my account. So the phone channel becomes a channel for more complex tasks and the things that you can do more readily, more easily, like the kiosks in the airport, are going to be adopted a lot more. I mean, today people go to the web before they make a phone call. Let me check the fact. Let me check this. Let me check that. and then they call it almost as a last resort. If you have to call the phone right away, you kind of go, I got to make a phone call. I can't resolve it, on the web or through a chat session. So I do think it's a situation where there is going to be mass adoption towards it. Will companies go all out to do everything? Maybe not. But I do think in some sort of some level, they're going to move to that. Um, I even as much as a few years ago, I talked to some companies. They're like, no, we don't go through our customers, millions of customer calls to look at the analytics. That's changing. And there were inhibitors to that. It was expensive, couldn't do it fast enough, it wasn't accurate. So as the technology gets better, those inhibitors get knocked down as you provide, companies like Define Crowd provide better data to build better systems. It almost can't not take advantage of it. It's becoming easier to do it.
Yeah, that's the way I feel. Yeah. So yeah, complete agreement. It's just interesting to think about, uh, the spectrum of possibilities. I'm going to ask, so we've got a question. If you got a question for Russ, put it in the Q&A, and I'll pull some of these out of the chat in a minute, but I'm going to read this one out of the Q&A first. And I'm just going to read this verbatim. This is from Eric. Seems like there are a lot of offerings in the market that claim to address call centers, but they approach from different angles. Can you describe the types of solutions out there and maybe some examples and/or pros and cons? So basically, we've talked at a reasonably high level about all this. Maybe take a step deeper. If somebody's thinking about, if they got a call center, they got a contact center, some area where they're thinking about integrating this technology, what are some of the mechanics that maybe they need to be thinking about?
So the biggest thing that's changed in the last couple of years is just the channels and modalities. It was pretty straightforward, 10, 15 years ago. It was the phone. I called in, right? Maybe I can self-service through a touch-tone IVR. And if I didn't, I went to an agent. So nowadays, what you're seeing a lot of different channels. You're seeing people who can do this on a mobile app, right? You can do it via a chatbot. And the early chatbots were terrible. They basically said, how can I help you? That's all they were good for. A virtual assistant that might even speak to you. So companies will approach it by, not everybody had a chatbot. Still companies, not all of them have a chatbot, but a lot of them are doing. The biggest thing I see is early on, these were siloed in a customer. If a customer had a chatbot, maybe that was the marketing team. If a customer had an IVR, that was one team. If a customer had a mobile app, well, that was the mobile team. And so they were siloed. And what happened is you got different experiences. And if I had a chat and I got stuck in the chat, I was just stuck there. I had to make a phone call, completely different, almost like different companies. What you're seeing today is you're seeing the term conversational AI means it's a framework. I'm building one framework, right? And my channels sit on top. So whether I'm texting or chatting or calling, right, I'm basically using the same AI engine underneath to serve any channel. So that's where they're trying. That's the biggest part. You're trying to combine your channels, have a consistent framework. So if I build a natural language framework, I'm building it for all my channels. So that's where you've seen a lot of the disparity before, but it's starting to come together now under like a single umbrella.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm going to ask you another question that's related to a question that's in the chat. So, but it's also ties into something that you touched on earlier. So companies of a certain size, mid-size to large enterprise, they've got all these different channels. You talked about it. You touched on it a couple of times in this chat. You got chatbots that do different things. You got people that may be calling in. You got interactions on the web. You got interactions on mobile. You got interactions in any number of potential places. And with what Define Crowd does, and the types of things that make Define Crowd interesting and special, it's really interesting to me to think about. You talk about data in particular contexts, but you don't hear as much talked about how to properly and effectively move data from one channel to another, to another, to another, while maintaining the integrity of the core insights coming out of that. Maybe talk to me for a minute about, what you've seen, maybe some best practices, or maybe a company that you've seen do it well, that manage data across different channels in some sort of cohesive, synthesized fashion.
Yeah, I mean, some of our big partners on our website do a very good job at managing data and looking at it. And there's different ways you can do it. You can collect data in many different domains and languages. We do things like translations as well to help companies translate from language to language to language. So I think the companies that do it well are the companies that look at all aspects of the data. So not just collecting data. Oh, I collected all of this Spanish data. I now have a Spanish model. So the companies that do it better are the ones that properly label and tag their data as well and collect it in different domains. So the examples are, if I want to build up something for medical or healthcare, right? I just don't go out and collect data in a language. I need to go out and collect data specific to medical. So I might have to look at collecting data from doctors and lawyers, from doctors and nurses and pharmacists who say drug names properly. Because if I call in and said I want my prescription of tizanidine, most IVR systems or speech systems would be like, what is that? So you have to go out and get specific domain type of data to make your system better. And then, properly tune it so it understands. And it's not just domain specific data, could be accented data, right? We talk about, oh, I have an English call model. Well, that's not enough sometimes. I worked with a company in one of my previous jobs where their call center was English, but they were all Filipino. And so the speech to text analytics system did not understand it. So a company like Define Crowd, we go out and we get, okay, we're going to get call center data, or we're going to get, speech data, but we're going to get it with Filipino-based accents so we can better train the system. So the companies that we've seen that don't do it better, they look at accented domains. They looked at just filling out their data capabilities across many things. And again, using labeling and tagging to make sure that they're understanding the intent of that data.
No, that's well said. And I think back to my interactions with one of the banks that we use. I have to call and get a very specific piece of information. Mm-hmm. So there's this customer journey that I think is interesting just to talk about. Yeah, I'm one person, but there's still something to glean here. So first of all, I don't want to do it. Okay, I would rather not do it at all. So yeah. There's your first data point. So I call, I know precisely the cadence of zeros because you do have to wait until it initiates, for it to recognize the zero. So I know the cadence of zeros. Then when I finally get to the agent, in order to access this information, I have to answer 5 questions, 5, wow. every time about my company, and they're the same every time. They're in the same order every time. And a few months ago, I actually, before the guy on the other end of the line even started asking, I just rattled off the answers, and he was disturbed by that. Yeah. Which I thought was absolutely hilarious. So, and then I was able to get the information I needed. Now, the next time I logged into the mobile app, or the next time I logged into the website, if I had seen, hey, they don't even have to say this, but hey, we saw that you called in for this particular thing, And we had some sentiment analysis, a little bit of insight going on, and we realized you probably don't want to do that. Maybe the time of day is part of that context. Maybe there's other things. Um, Let us sell you this report. Let us sell you access to the report. Pay an extra $5 fee, and you never have to make that call again. It's in line with one of the comments in the chat about upselling and
Hmm.
how richer data and these sort of rich interactions and context that AI can provide can lead to upsell opportunities. But that's what I think about is and it's worth talking about is upselling
Yeah.
as part of this equation because first of all, for companies to get AI in a call center, contact center right, I'm going to want to interact with them more
Yeah.
because they don't suck.
Yeah.
And so many things I deal with do.
Yeah.
So
You're
if you get,
seeing, you're seeing even things like voice biometrics. So the answer to the 5 questions, voice biometrics is coming into play where you still need many factors to authenticate, but your voice is your password can maybe reduce the number of questions and help validate who you are and who you're calling. So there's unique technologies coming in that you're right are making it easier to do that.
yeah, and along the lines of the comment that's in the chat, if I'm in the hotel room and maybe I've got some initial questions, we sort of talked about there's a really nice way that voice and AI can remove some of the burden off of the reception area by answering basic things. But if I'm sitting there and I'm flipping through the channels, and again I'm talking about a potential anecdote across modalities here. If I'm flipping through channels, and maybe I stop a little bit at the Terminator on USA, and then I end up turning the TV off and reading a book or something. And it's quiet in the room for a little bit. There's some data there that says maybe I'm bored, and
Yeah.
maybe there's an upsell opportunity, or maybe the hotel itself knows that I'm at the front end of a 3-day stay,
Right.
and this is unusual behavior for somebody at the beginning of a 3-day stay. What's much more usual is for someone to come in and not be in the room for a while, or have a much more targeted pattern of what they want to be doing.
Yeah.
So, I see upsell opportunities all over the place. There's a question that just got put in the chat that I'm going to ask you. Um,
I see it about how AI applies to kilobyte systems with containing thousands of documents and Word PDFs, accurate information brought back to an agent. So, if I'm looking, I don't know if I can answer the question correctly, but if I'm looking at, thousands of kilobytes of data, that's where and that's the same thing with speech analytics, right? In the call center, they take the speech, they convert it to text, and now you have millions of terabytes of data, and you comb through it. And the way you comb through those systems is you build an ontology of what are you looking for? I'm looking for key words or key phrases or key things. So a customer tells us, I'm looking for, maybe I'm a telecom company. I'm looking for the word cancel because I want to see customers who are churning, right? Or maybe I'm looking for something else. So you build key sets of data, ontologies of data. So when you go through, that's what you're looking for, through all those documents. We worked with a customer doing a proof of concept. There were all of these like legal documents. And what they were looking for is they were trying to identify who the plaintiffs were and who the judges were. And so, your system, you use the data and you train your system to go through and say, this was the case date, this was the defendant, this was a thing. So you train your system using data to go through, and over time, you go from human data to machine learning to do it at a much higher clip. But you have to train it first with data.
so this is a great segue for how I want to close. So, we like to get people out on time around here, and be respectful. And the question that was just put into the Q&A is going to speak to what I'm going to ask you. So, we've talked pretty high level about AI and call centers. That's what this fireside chat was
Yep.
for. And I think the case has been built. We didn't dwell on privacy that long because no one's dwelling on privacy that long right now. The day for privacy is going to come back with a vengeance sooner or later. But I think, privacy is just a story of, am I getting enough utility and value out of your service? And it's much more that sort of conversation as opposed to, are you violating my trust? Russ, with you, you're in a position of sales. You've been in sales, it looks like the bulk of your career. You're in a sales role with Define Crowd. I want to end with the value proposition of Define Crowd. So somebody is on this webinar, they're watching it live right now, they're watching it on demand later. They understand the value. They've got a call center, they've got a contact center. They're like, yeah, I want to get involved. I want to, no matter what it is I'm doing, I want to integrate AI more.
Right.
What role does Define Crowd have to play, and what's your specific value proposition to the person watching this?
I'm going to use a real life case today. We have a customer we work with today. Their customers called Voci. They had a predominantly U.S. North America based center. They were, acquired, bought by an international company. They have to expand internationally, right? How do you do that? They don't have the data. So the value we bring is we can provide data to them in other foreign languages to help them build out their AI, conversational AI, speech to text in other languages. That is one way we're helping. We're helping customers that don't have a domain specific model, right? So if they want to build an ASR for medical or for legal or for telecom, right? We're helping them collect voice speech data that is domain specific so that their systems are more accurate. We're helping people evaluate their text to speech. We will go through and we'll have, our crowd members evaluate it 1 through 5. Is it good? Is it bad? Give it back to them and they learn, okay, maybe my system needs to be improved. We're helping customers do label and tag data to, as I mentioned before, improve the sentiment and emotion so that your system gets it better. It's not simple. Another example is the understanding and intent, right? I'll use the order checks thing I said before. There's 100 different ways I can order checks. If my system only accepted, I want to order new checks, it's pretty limited. But maybe the person says new checks, I want checks, check reorder. We help train systems to learn, hey, there's different ways that people can order checks. So, the data we provide to customers, it makes their systems better. It helps them expand, helps them understand domain specifics. So that's kind of what we do. And like I said, we work with a lot of companies and every day we work with more and more companies doing more and more things.
Excellent. Yeah, well put. Nice job. So thank you to everybody watching this webinar right now. Thank you to everybody who will be watching it on demand. Russ, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. This was fun.
Yeah, sharing your experience and your perspective. It's greatly appreciated. What is the best way for someone to contact you?
Well, I just go to our website. Go to definecrowd.com. You go to our website. You can log on there. You can send us a request. My email is russell.vetrano@definecrowd.com. Reach out to me personally. We'd love to help you. So, but I'd probably start with our website first.
Excellent. Russ, thank you very much. Thanks to Define Crowd. And you got it. Until next time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care. See you.